Hello friend, welcome back to our channel KBS Technocrat. Today in this video we are going to deep dive on queue trigger. So in this we are going to understand what is a queue trigger, supported queue types, right? How many types of queues are there which are supported, right? And then when to use queue triggers, what are the real time use cases where we can use that queue triggers, creating a queue trigger and debugging locally. So we will be creating inbound and outbound queue triggers, and we will debug local, and we'll see that different aspects of security and debugging. Also we will see what is the best practices when we are going to use queue triggers. Let's get started. So first we'll go with the theory, and then we'll go with the practical example. So let's understand what is a Azure Queue trigger or queue trigger. So basically, a queue triggers are a feature in Azure function that allow you to automatically execute code in response to messages in an Azure storage. Why use queue trigger? So they enable event-driven architecture, allowing for scalable and decoupling processing of tasks. It also allows you to asynchronous mechanism of communication. Okay, so let's understand what is Azure Queue Storage. So Azure Queue Storage is a cloud service that provides reliable and scalable messaging for asynchronous communication between application and component. So what is the benefit of this? Simple to use, reliable, supports a large volume of messaging, order processing. So what are the basic use cases for this? Basically, some kind of asynchronous communication, order processing, task scheduling, and communication between multiple microservices. Why microservices? Because when you design a microservices, each microservices might have their own database instances, and it might be possible that the synchronization of data is not happen frequently. To do that, or in that case, that use case scenario, we normally use the queue to queue and Azure function, which use that queue trigger for synchronize the data from one microservice to other microservice data, right? So understanding a queue trigger. A queue trigger is a type of Azure function that gets involved when a message is added to a specified uh, Azure storage queue or any kind of queue. Let's say consider when a application insert a data in a particular queue, right? Then you want to trigger something, or someone should be there who can execute or process the data, and after processing it should insert or it should push a message to different queue. So Azure function is the listener of that particular queue. As soon as messages are inserted in that particular queue, Azure function start listening to those messages and processing to that message, right? Azure function automatically process the messages and can perform barrier tasks based on this, right? So event driven processing. So this basically it's all happen using event driven. Whenever a event triggers, right, a message has been triggered into the queue, and then the Azure function listen that message and process it. At high level, how does this communication happen? Let's say consider you are having a web application, right? And then you have a queue, and then you are having Azure function, and then your database. So basically, one or more application used to push a message into the queues, right? And then this particular Azure functions, one or more Azure functions are configured to listen those messages, right? And then as soon as message being inserted in this particular queues, right, this function will process that particular messages, and it will do further processing. For this scenario, what I have done it is I have shown the database. That means after the message arrive into the message queue, this Azure function basically used to listen that message and process it and save into the databases. So let's understand how this Azure Queue trigger works. So as I explained, a new message is added to Azure Queue. The message trigger detect the new message. Then the corresponding Azure function is invoked to process the message, right? And Okay, so setting up Azure Queue storage, I will skip it as of now because I'm using the local storage using Azure, right? So we will discuss in more detail how we can set up, right? So we will see that. So let's see how we can create a Azure function using Azure Queue. So first of all, I need to start the Azure app, right? Because I'm running my application on local storage, right? So if you are aware about that, how to use Azure Storage Emulator, then it's fine. If not, then please refer my previous video where I have explained how to configure and how to use it Azure for local data storage. Let's say, so I just executed this command. Let's say I need to put cd and I need to go this directory, and then I have to run that azure.exe, right? So okay, so I need to run this. When I run, we can see that the Azure command has been executed, and now we can see that the blob services, queue services, and table services are running on this port, right? To see that the physical location of that particular blob queue at Azure, we need to have it that blob uh, a Microsoft Azure Explorer, right? So I have just installed it, and you can see that here is there, right? So we are going to use emulator. So all our queues, blobs, and table will be located in this, right? This area. So if you once it's loaded, you will be able to see similar kind of folder structure where we can see the blob container, queue, and tables, right? So let's create a project until the time is it will get loaded. So I'm going to open Visual Studio, right? And then I'm going to create a new Azure function, and I will select a trigger type as a queue. So file, new project, and then I will select Azure function and next, right? I will change the location, right? I will give Azure function queue trigger demo, right? And then we'll click on next. Okay, so I'm going to use queue trigger, right? And then when you are going to test on your local system, like using Azure, right, you have to check this checkbox like use Azure, right? And just give a connection string, any name you can give it. Okay, so if you are not aware about it, how to configure and how to use it, as I mentioned earlier also, you can refer my previous video which I have detailed video where I have explained this all the step from installation to configuration. Okay, so I've given that connection string, and then I click on this create. It will take few seconds and it will install the dependencies, right? So here we have to select that Azurite emulators, storage Azurite emulators, and I click on next. I do not want to store anywhere, so I can, and I do not want to execute this all steps, so finish, right? So if you go to Solution Explorer, you will be able to see a function has been created, and also it has a connected, right? Because we have selected the local storage is having a connected service here, right? Now what we have to do that, since we have given a different connection string name here, we have to go and define the connection string. So I will go here and I will try to put it here like connect connection string, right? And then I will put a value is same. So as I mentioned, this connection string is provided by Azure. This is what you can use it for local connection. So I need to, any kind of storage when you are connecting using Azure, you will have to put it. Make sure that this name and this connection string name is correct. So I think it's correct. So that's fine, right? So now we can see that this emulator is displaying the blob, queue, and tables, and our Azure function has been created. Now, so before we run it, since this Azure function is comes with template, so let's understand this. So this is having a queue name. Basically, this is a queue name and having a connection string name. So connection string name we have already defined. The queue name is this. So what we are going to do that we are going to copy this queue name. You can give any name, and then I'm going to create a new queue here, right? So I will give the same name, whatever there in my file, right? So there is no data. Now we are good, and we are going to run it now. Okay, so till time is building and running. What we are doing is basically we are displaying the message what is there in the queue as a message dot message text, right? So this is a simple message we are displaying. We are displaying the content of that particular message whatever there in the queue, right? So currently when we are running there is no message, so it will not display anything. So what we are going to do that we are going to push a message in that particular queue, and then we will see on the console window is a displaying. So now this function is running fine. Let's go and add a message. So as soon as you add a message there, it will display here, right? So let's minimize this here in one window, right? So we are going to have it two window here. One is this and other one is this. So I'm going to add this here, right? So what I'm going to see, I'm add a message. So let's say consider I'm going to click on add, and this is, I'm going to type this is Q trigger demo message, like, right? And then I will click OK, right? So if you see, as soon as I added the message here, the queue has trigger, and then you can see this started. It's displaying the message whatever we have in that file. So if you see, if I maximize this now, let's say maximize it. So if you see this is the queue trigger message whatever I pushed in that particular queue, right? So as soon as you push a message, it will be displayed there. Let's say try one more time here and add one more message. This is this is second message, right? So I will click OK, and you can see here it's just as soon as is message is pushed, you can see this is the message is displaying on console window of the function which we are writing. That means as soon as a message is pushed or added into the queue, it's trigger the function, and function used to process that particular, right? Let's go here now. So this functions basically explain how the inbound kind of binding for this Azure functions works using QTrigger. Let's try to have it a function where we are going to use in and out both binding, and we will see that how does it works, right? So to save time, I have a code, and then what I'm going to do that I'm going to add it that function only, right? So I'm going to create a new function, right? This function called QTrigger function, and I will test it. right? So I will go to Solution Explorer, and then I will add other function here. Let's say add new project, and then I will use Azure function next, and okay, that's fine. And then we will select same option queue trigger, and then here also we'll put connection string. You can give any name. Let's say we'll give connection string 1. That's fine. And then we will click on create, right? And then we will select storage Azure emulator, and next. We will not show this connection string anywhere, and then we'll click on next. We will not store this secret anywhere. I just click on finish. So my new functions has been created. In this function, what I'm going to do, that I'm going to just change this code, right? So I'm just going to change this code, and I will give the function name as a different function name. Let's see that. So okay, so in this example, what we are having in and out both queue. So here, both kind of binding here. So let's say consider here, this is the input. That means this is input queue, where this input queue name is input queue, and this is output. So I have given output queue name. So what basically it's doing, whenever a message added into the input queue is reading that message, and then I'm appending this into the existing message. In the real time scenario, what does it do? Basically, it's basically process that message. After processing, it used to put a message into the other queue, so that the other process can listen that messages or process that message. So for this code, we are displaying the message 1 and message 2. That is message 1 and message 2 here. This is just for information. It does not require. Okay. And then we are returning this message. So basically what will happen whenever we run this application, this Azure function app, then whenever I push a message into the input queue, it will read that message, append that message with the out message, and put into the output queue. So let's see the output. First, I am running this. Okay, so message is running. Now I will, one side I will open this, right? So I'm going to add a message here into this is, so I have already created input queue and output queue. So I'm just going to add a message into the input queue. I'm just writing this is input message, right? And then I will add that message. So once we add this message, okay, sorry, I have added into the output method. Let me add here. This is this is input message, right? And click OK. Once I click OK, you can see here reset trigger that message, and it's happened. Now we have to go in output queue, and we need to refresh it. Just refresh it, and you will be able to see a message entered into the output queue. So if I go output queue, we'll be able to see that message. Let's say this is input, this is output. Just wait for a few seconds. Let me reopen output queue. So you can see these messages are there. So output queue is containing that messages, right? So let me delete all these messages which I by mistake I inserted here. So delete this messages. Yes, right. And delete this messages, and we will delete this message as well. Right. So now refresh all. There is no message into the output queue now. Again, I will go to the input queue and add a message there. Right. So I'll click. This is second input message. Right. I will click OK. So message get processed here, and then I will go to the output queue, right? So you can see here this is output message is getting inserted, right? So that's how it works. Let's move on the other aspects. Let's understand the real-time scenario where we use this. So let's say consider this is the overall high-level architecture where you have a client, you have a web application, you have a queue, and then you have function app and Azure cache, and then you have a database. So let's say consider in this scenario, whenever a client uh, communicate a user try to do some operation on web application, that web application uh, push a message into the queue, and then that Azure function, which is configured as a queue trigger, will use to listen that messages and process this into the multiple data sources. Right here, Azure SQL databases, Azure Cosmos DB. So asynchronously, it used to pick up the message, read the message, and process it. So web application does not require to wait this complete process to be completed. Thanks for watching my video. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe and share.